Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Sports Lock Podcast. I am your host, Ben Mosteller. I took a little bye week last week in week 4, and we are back for week 5 of our predictions, bets, daily fantasy, and start sit. Went out to Vegas. Didn't do so great. However, we did hit on some sports bets out there on Thursday Night Football. Pretty happy about that and got a free drink out of it. So now we are going to look into week 5 and go from here, try to get us some locks of the week. I don't have any stats, of course, since we did week 4. We will bring those back next week for the week 6 preview. If you want to check out my old videos, and make sure you follow on YouTube, Sports Lock Podcasts, subscribe on there. Also follow on Instagram and TikTok at Sports Lock Podcast. So it's going to be a quick video tonight. We're going to just run through it and do the bets, followed by our daily fantasy and fantasy start sit. So let's start with the ever so boring Thursday Night Football game, the Bears at the Commanders. Now, the Bears looked like they had it against the Broncos this past week. However, the Broncos came storming back, ended up winning that game. Very disappointing. Washington put up a fight this past week against the Eagles, and now they're at home and they're 5.5-point favorites. I'm going to do a lock already on Thursday Night Football, and I'm going to lock in the under of 44.5 points in this game. Washington's offense isn't terrible. Chicago's offense put up some numbers against the Broncos, but so did the Miami Dolphins when they put 70 on them the week prior. When it comes down to it, Washington's defense, I think, is just too elite. I think Justin Fields is going to make some mistakes that we've seen in the first couple of games. And ultimately, I think 44.5 is just a little bit too high. So I'm locking in the under as my first lock of the week. We jump to Sunday, and we have another game overseas. The Jaguars beat the Falcons last week there, and now the Bills come overseas, and Jacksonville's got the week to stay there. That could be a benefit to them, but ultimately I'm locking in the Bills minus 5.5. They just ultimately destroyed the number 1 team in the AFC and the Dolphins last week, and I think they carry that momentum into facing Jacksonville. Jacksonville's been a little shaky this year. Obviously, the win against the Falcons was very good, but I think the Bills can easily beat them by a touchdown. We're already locking in Bills minus 5.5, and I'm playing over 48.5. I think a lot of points will be put up on the board. Houston at Atlanta. I like the way that Houston's playing right now. Destroyed Pittsburgh. Atlanta, obviously coming from overseas to loss to Jacksonville. And I'm going to take Houston plus 2.5 on the road. I think they outright win. I think it's going to be a close game, and I think it's going to be higher scoring than expected. I'm playing over 41.5 points. CJ Stroud has just been a monster. This is a great matchup for him this week. He's been throwing 2 touchdown passes the last 3 games at least, and I think he does it again here on Sunday afternoon. So give me Houston plus 2.5 and to win. Carolina's plus 8.5 at Detroit. The Lions get a little bit extra time off after playing Thursday Night Football, gives their guys some rest, and they're going to be ready to take on this Carolina team who's been struggling. And I think it'll be a higher scoring game, so I'm playing over 44.5. But ultimately, I'm not going against the Lions at home against the Panthers. I just think that they will come out firing on all cylinders. You got David Montgomery, who played phenomenally on Thursday Night Football. Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jared Goff has been doing fairly well himself. So I think with all that being said, Detroit minus 8.5. Tennessee is at Indianapolis. The Colts are looking to bounce back at home here. The Titans coming into town. This is always a great divisional game, but it's usually a defensive-minded game. Right now, the over-under at 42.5. I'm going to play under. I think these defenses will come to life. I think this will be a very close, low-scoring game. But ultimately, I'll take Indianapolis minus 1.5 at home. I think it's a good bounce back for Anthony Richardson after the injury. Obviously came back last week, but wasn't the great Anthony Richardson that he can be. Tennessee had just kind of playing some sloppy ball. So can they stop Derrick Henry? You stop everything. And I think that they'll keep him to a low amount of yards rushed. So I'm locking in for my third lock under 42.5 and the Colts to win at home. My last lock already comes in already, and that is the Dolphins minus 10.5 at home against the Giants. The Dolphins are going to come out mad after that loss to Buffalo last week. The Giants look terrible. They may not have Saquon Barkley, and if that's so, it's even going to be worse. They may not have Saquon Barkley, and if that's so, it's even going to be worse. This is going to be a higher scoring affair for over 49.5. But I think the Dolphins just pretty much stomp the Giants, and they win by at least 2 touchdowns. I think this is a great bounce back game for Tua, and just a big win for the Dolphins this week. We have the Saints plus 1.5 on the road against the Patriots. This one won't be as entertaining as people might think. I just think that the defenses again will come to life. I think it'll be under 40. I'm just not really going to be a big fan of watching this. I'm going to take the Patriots though at home minus 1.5 and ride it there. Baltimore's at Pittsburgh. They're 3.5-point favorites, and normally Pittsburgh can battle the Ravens really well at home. However, I have no faith in the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. Matt Canada has been there way too long. They have not had a 400-plus yard game on offense, while every team's at least had 3 or 4. And it's just ridiculous to watch them play. What they did against the Texans was insane. Kenny Pickett says that he'll go, but again, a knee injury. Freiermuth's out. You don't have Johnson. I think it's going to be a rough game, and I think Baltimore, the way they played last week, will carry into this week in Pittsburgh. They get the win, minus 3.5. I'm going under 38.5, though, because I don't trust the Steelers' offense. For the late afternoon games, we start with the Eagles at the Rams. The Eagles are minus 4.5. Cooper Kupp may be back, and I think this game's going to be a very close, high-scoring affair. So I'm going to take the Rams to cover the 4.5, but I have to give the slight advantage to the Eagles. They just look like a very good team right now, firing on all cylinders. DeAndre Swift has been killing it. A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith have been killing it, and of course, Hurts has been killing it as well. So I'm playing over 50.5 Rams to cover the plus 4.5, but ultimately the Eagles come out, win by a field goal in Los Angeles. The Bengals at the Cardinals. I would hope that this is a big bounce back game for the Bengals. They just have looked terrible on offense. Joe Burrow has looked terrible. T. Higgins probably not playing. So this is going to be a close game as well, I think, but I'm still going to take the Bengals minus 3. I want to be shocked if Arizona wins this one. I'm going to go slightly over 44.5. Not great defenses. I think points will be put on the board, and we'll go from there. Move on to the Jets at the Broncos. I'm going to take the Broncos minus 1.5 at home. The Jets, I think, will give them a game. I think it's going to be under 43.5. The defenses, of course, the Jets is a lot better than the Broncos. However, playing in Denver is going to be tough for the Jets. So I don't think a lot of points will be put on the board. So give me the under. We have the Chiefs at the Vikings. Normally, this is a very good game, but the Vikings have struggled tremendously to get a victory. And I like Kansas City to win in a close one, but the Vikings to cover that plus 5.5 and over 53.5 points. The offenses can score. Which defense is going to hold up? And I think that's going to be Kansas City's, even on the road. Sunday Night Football, we have the Cowboys at the Niners. It's going to be a phenomenal Sunday Night Football game. This could go either way, but the way that the Niners have been playing on both sides of the ball have been tremendous. I really think that they can win this game. I like them minus 3.5 and to win outright over the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm playing over 45.5. I think that's a solid line. It's going to be close to that. But these offenses can light it up. And although we're going to have 2 amazing defensive battles, I still think that the offense will win in this one and get over that 45. And then on to Monday Night Football, which is a game that most people might skip. It is the Packers at the Raiders, both disappointing teams, especially the Packers last week. I like the Raiders at home in a surprise victory here, plus 1.5 to win outright. They really battled last week, and I think that they will, make this a competitive game against the Packers in the Death Star in Vegas. So give me the Raiders plus 1.5 and under 45.5. I think 45.5 is a lot of points. I don't think those offenses are that phenomenal to get there. I think the defenses will improve this week to hit that under. And teams that are on buys this week, we have the Browns, the Chargers, the Seahawks, and the Buccaneers. So a lot of fantasy meat is going to be out this week, considering guys like Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, DK Metcalf, and Mike Evans, who is battling an injury. But a lot of key guys will be out in week 5. So go on the waiver wire and see who you can pick up. All right, so our week 5 daily fantasy is here, and I like this lineup this week. I know I say that every week that I love the lineups, but this might not be as flashy of a team, but I think these guys will get the job done. So let's start with CJ Stroud. I told you why I liked him. He's just a great quarterback so far in his rookie season. He's on pace to finish as the rookie of the year. He's had 20 plus fantasy point games in his last 3 games and has averaged 2 touchdowns and over 300 passing yards in those games. So, with that being said, at only 6,000 against that Atlanta Falcons defense, I really love CJ Stroud for the price this week. He is a start of mine as well. We're then going to go with David Montgomery coming off the huge Thursday night football game with 3 touchdowns, and he has been averaging 23 touches per game, which is insane. So we get the workload this week against the poor Carolina Panthers defense. I love me some David Montgomery, especially for that price. The other running back we're going with is James Conner. He has a favorable matchup against the Bengals as well. He had a bad game last week against the Niners, but the Niners have a very good run defense. But prior to that, he was averaging 17 fantasy points per game, and he gets a lot of the touches. So give me James Conner for that 5,800. Now to our wide receivers, we are going to pay for the top guy this week. We might as well while we can, and that is Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings for 9,400, the most expensive guy in daily fantasy this week. He's been the best wide receiver, and I think he's got a great matchup this week. So he can easily get you 20 plus fantasy points. I'm willing to pay it. I'm not a big fan of some wide receiver matchups this week. So Justin Jefferson, we're going with you. Adam Thielen is a sleeper of mine this week, and he was a sleeper of mine to start the season. If you listen to my podcast, he has been killing it so far, averaging 8 receptions per game and over 20 fantasy points per game. He was the guy, he was ranked below Chark that I said you need to get late in drafts. I have him in one of my leagues where I am number 1, and it's because of a lot of these sleeper guys that I've picked, Adam Thielen being one of them. Only $5,100 is an insane value for Thielen. Great matchup against the Lions defense. Give me Adam Thielen. And finally, for our wide receivers, Romeo Doubs, who's been stepping up there for the Green Bay Packers as their number 1 over Christian Watson. Doubs, he's another reception hog as well, and he's got a great matchup against the Raiders secondary, and he's had 3 touchdowns in his first 4 games. So we're going to ride that for only 4,900. Then it's a flex. We're going to go Alvin Kamara. I don't like the matchup as much with the Patriots. However, he had 13 receptions last week in his first game back. I think that he will at least have 8 this week. He'll be the ball hog. They're going to try to get it to Alvin Kamara. He's their best player on the team, so I like him at that flex position. Going Zach Ertz for the value of only 3,500, which is insane with his very favorable matchup against the Bengals. He has been performing 6 receptions and over 50 yards in 2 of each of his last 3 games. They're getting him the ball, and he's just great value. Another guy that I really liked as a sleeper going into the start of the NFL season. And lastly, going with the Tennessee Titans, I'm shocked they're only 2,400. They're going against their division rival, the Colts. I think, again, it's going to be a low-scoring affair. And just love the price. I'm always looking for a defensive price that is very cheap. So I'm riding the Titans defense this week. And finally, the week 5 start sit. We're going back to CJ Stroud. Love the matchup. He's been performing well. I'm going to take CJ Stroud this week against the Falcons to put up a great performance. 2+ touchdowns, 300 yards. It's going to happen. I'm going to sit Justin Fields. He's coming off an incredible game of 4 touchdowns against the Broncos, but it was against a very poor defense. Otherwise, Fields has struggled a lot this year. And the matchup this week, I don't like against the Commanders. So I'm going to be sitting him. I know you get one good game out of him. You want to start him. I actually have Stroud or I have Fields in a league, and I'm going to go Stroud. I'm going to go Stroud all day in that matchup. So I'm sitting Justin Fields this week. I'm going to start James Conner. Just told you why I liked him this week. I think he goes off against the Bengals. I'm going to sit Breece Hall, though. They did announce today that he is not on a snap count anymore, but I just don't like the matchup in Denver. I think they're going to be throwing the ball a little bit more, and I'm going to sit Breece Hall. Starting Adam Thielen, he's going to have a phenomenal week against the Falcons, and I think that he will at least grab one touchdown. So give me Adam Thielen to start. I'm going to sit Jerry Jeudy in that matchup of the Jets Broncos. Jeudy has only averaged 3 receptions per game, and it's going to be a tough Jets secondary. So I'm going to sit Jerry Jeudy. Starting Zach Ertz, again, just told you why. All these guys were over on my daily fantasy. I'm going to sit Kyle Pitts. He only's been averaging 2 receptions per game and has 0 touchdowns. I know you want to start him because of the name. I know he's going up against the Panthers, but he's just not a guy that the Falcons are getting involved. So I would be sitting him wherever you got him. That is week 5 for you guys. Thank you for listening in. Please follow on Instagram, TikTok, if you haven't already. I post information on Instagram. I post TikTok videos over there to predict the week's bets that I place. I'll put on Instagram. And finally, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Weekly predictions for the NFL. We dive into it all just like we did today. Normally we do take a look at the week prior before we move on to the week before. But again, like I said at the beginning of the video, away in Vegas, enjoying some time, taking a bye week of myself. So thanks for listening in. Enjoy your week. Good luck in fantasy football and with your bets. I'll talk to you guys next week.